Good evening. I'm Spencer Williams, Director of Land Use and Topography for Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso.
And I am Tal Litwin, Planning and Policy Analyst for the Borough President.
This uniform land use review procedure public hearing is being conducted from the Brooklyn Borough Hall courtroom on Wednesday, June 10th, 2026. Please note that this hearing is being streamed via WebEx and recorded to comply with the Open Meetings Law. The video will later be posted on the Brooklyn Borough President's YouTube channel. We have two items on the agenda this evening. Following the applicant's presentations and any questions from the chair and panel, members of the public will be invited to testify on the applications. As a reminder, all comments are limited to 2 minutes. We will accept testimony tonight both in person and virtually via WebEx. Members of the public who wish to testify in person should sign up on the sign-in sheet at the front of the room. Those who wish to comment via WebEx should use the raised hand function on WebEx and keep their hands raised until they have delivered their testimony. If you have dialed in on a phone, you can press *3 to raise your hand and we will call on you at that time. In addition to testimony received this evening, members of the public may also submit their comments in writing to testimony@brooklynbp.nyc.gov for the Borough President's consideration through Friday, June 12th, 2026. Please call the first item.
Calendar item number 132 Melrose Street rezoning. An application by Melrose Towers Corporation for a zoning map amendment M11 to R6A M12A or MX22 and a zoning text amendment to facilitate a new 6-story, 24,653 square foot mixed-use development with 18 dwelling units, 5 MIH, and 6,000 square feet of ground floor commercial at 132 to 136 Melrose Street in Bushwick, Community District 4. Please state your name and present this application.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Frank Noriega. I'm here from Belkin, Bird & Goldman on behalf of the applicant, joined here tonight by my colleague, Elena Green. Thank you, Borough President Reynoso and members of the Borough President's staff for having us. As we just said, we're here to present an application on 132-136 Melrose Street in Bushwick. We're looking to rezone an area for a proposed zoning map amendment and a zoning text amendment to allow for a modest mixed-use building, which will provide also for permanent affordable housing. Just a little slide here showing the existing conditions of the site. It's shown on the screen. The project area is, for the rezoning, is 5 tax lots, 3 of which are owned by the developer and the applicant, which will be the site of the development. But we're also including 2 tax lots immediately to the right on the screen, which are 2 existing residential buildings, which being in an M11 district are currently non-conforming, so the proposed rezoning will bring them into conformance. On the slide now, we're showing the area map, showing the colors of the various uses in the area. As you can see, majority of the area, particularly the areas, the blocks to the south and north of us, are orange and yellow, representing yellow the 1 and 2 family, sometimes 3 family homes. The orange are the multifamily developments, and you can see that the majority of the area is residential currently, with a little bit of mixed use of commercial and industrial mixed in. As we're proposing residential, one of the things we like to look at is transit in the area, and the site that we're developing is shown on screen. We're about a 7-minute walk from the JMZ station at Myrtle Avenue, and we also have access to several bus lines. Another representation of the uses in the area, you can see from a satellite view. The area is mixed of anywhere from 2 to 5-story residential buildings behind us, to the recent Rheingold development that's immediately across the street, which is up to 8 or 9 stories of mixed use and residential. But as you can see with our site in orange, the block frontage along Myrtle, where we're rezoning or proposing to rezone, is largely undeveloped. There's a lot of vacant lots, including our site, which we'll get to, is predominantly just for parking. And we're looking to utilize that in a more efficient manner. Going to the street view now, You can see the site highlighted with the dashed line. And I wanted to take a pause. The upper right-hand photo, we can see that the two residential properties that will be included in this rezoning, as mentioned before, will be brought into conformance as part of this application. But I also want to pause and note the photograph on the bottom left-hand corner, which is really the reason for this rezoning. Melrose is a very narrow street. It's only mapped at 50 feet wide. And when the applicant came to this site, they were looking to do warehousing uses at their site, and that was their intentional goal. And they're still operating as a warehousing use around the corner on Stanwix and Jefferson's. But ever since the residential development across the street, we have what you see here on the bottom left-hand side, which is a very heavily trafficked area with a lot of parking and a very narrow area for trucks, which is why led us to look at other options and bring this rezoning application that we have today, which is to rezone it to what we're proposing is an M12A mixed-use district paired with a M6A residential district. Just as a note, so this has been zoned as an M11 manufacturing district, which was not allowed for any residential as of right since the adoption of the 1961 zoning resolution. As we'll see in the following slides, that this has really been a low density residential district, and we're bringing the residential back to the area, or at least proposing to, but also being conscious that there's a desire for light industrial uses or manufacturing uses, which is why we're also including the MX or mixed use special district and pairing it with the manufacturing district to allow for such uses to be included in any sort of development. And then lastly, as part of this, we're also bringing in a text amendment to map mandatory inclusionary housing, or MIH, which will mean that anywhere in the rezoning, not only on our site, but as well as the sites next door, if there is any development or redevelopment of residential, that 25 to 30% of that floor area for the residential will be set aside and be permanently affordable housing. When looking at what we were proposing as far as the mixed use district and the density for the R6A, we looked at a couple of things, and as well as talking to the neighborhood and the city, but there's been two studies in the area specifically on this. One is the Bushwick Community Plan, as the name notes, it was done by the community. Really noted that what I said earlier is that there are a lot of non-conforming residential uses in this area, which this rezoning, particularly for the sites next to ours, will be brought into conformance with this, and also addresses issues with providing the MIH mapping, which will introduce a permanently affordable housing, which we're looking forward to provide. Separately, there was another study done, the Bushwick Neighborhood Plan done by the city, which went a little deeper in addition to identifying some of these same issues, went a little further and actually proposed specific densities or zoning districts that they thought were appropriate for the areas. And as you can see on the screen, our site, as labeled, is just right at the edge of this Bushwick Neighborhood Plan. But what's important to note is that under the plan, that the city thought it was appropriate, at least set away from Evergreen, that was an R6A was appropriate. And under the plan, they thought it should be paired with what they dubbed at the time an M3 district, M3 in parentheses, which doesn't exist. It was a proposed manufacturing district at the time. But the idea was that these M3s were going to be a 3 FAR commercial, allow for 3 FAR of commercial or industrial uses. Since then, however, under the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity, they came out with new manufacturing districts, including what is proposed, the M12A, which is contextual manufacturing district, meaning that it can't be as high, not as a sky exposure plane building that would normally be allowed in an M1 district. But it also has that FAR of 3 consistent with what was originally conceived under the Bushwick Neighborhood Plan, which is why we're proposing it as it is. Going back, just a little history of this site. As mentioned, this has been zoned as manufacturing since the 1960s under the original adoption of the modern zoning. But if you go back and look at like the 1940s tax photos that the city went around to take, you look at Melrose Street on both sides of the street in the 1940s, this was really a residential street. Then, as I said, in 1960, it was rezoned manufacturing. Residential was no longer permitted. It was only going to be commercial uses. So by the time 1980s rolled around and the tax photos were taken again, a lot of these residential buildings were demolished. It wasn't really redeveloped. As shown earlier, there's a lot of vacant lots. But you do see some remnants of some of the residential buildings, including in the bottom right-hand side. You can see the two residential buildings that are part of the rezoning that we're going to bring back into conformance by mapping this as a mixed-use manufacturing residential district. So what do we get in the end? With this rezoning, as was introduced, we're looking to build a building that would be roughly 24,653 square feet. Now, what does that mean? That's a mix between the ground floor commercial space. We're looking for some sort of light industrial use, but it could be retail, or we're looking for tenants and opening and having ongoing discussions regarding that. But the remainder would be residential above, which would be about 18 units, and based on the MIH would lead to 5 to 6 of those being affordable. I'm just going to pause here really quickly. So this is just an illustrative plan of what could be on the ground floor. Again, we're still having conversations with what or who could go in those spaces. It could be 2 spaces as shown on the screen. It could be 1 larger space, but it all ultimately depend on who and the end user will be at that site. One of the perks of building a new building, or at least one of the benefits for the city, is that when you do a new development, you're required to follow new sustainability rules. So with this new building, you're going to have a nice building that not only has a beautiful terrace that we're looking to do as an amenity to the tenants, but it'll also be a green roof to absorb stormwater and reduce heat. All of the units will have electric appliances as opposed to gas to reduce the on-site combustion. And similarly, all of these will be efficient as far as electric and low flow plumbing. All of these are great, and you would not necessarily see in older housing stock. And with that, I think I'm just going to pause and see if there's any questions.
All right, thank you for your presentation. We do have a few questions for the team. Community Board 4 expressed a desire for light manufacturing, and you mentioned that in your presentation, to be included on the ground floor, which would align with the purpose of the MX district. Can you provide an update on efforts to incorporate manufacturing space and identify a potential industrial tenant that you've made so far?
Absolutely. So as of yet, we haven't identified a firm tenant, but we are working with brokers as well as community groups to try to find some sort of light manufacturing industrial use, and we are committed to working to obtain that. And so we're still ongoing and looking at and having ongoing discussions regarding that.
Thank you. And has the applicant consulted with Evergreen Exchange, the local industrial business service provider, regarding the demand for manufacturing space in the area? If so, what, if any, feedback have you received so far?
Absolutely. I mean, yes, we have reached out to Evergreen. Unfortunately, it's only been preliminary discussions, but we do have a meeting on the books, and we're looking to speak to them on the 15th of next week. And we're optimistic that we can have some dialogue and see if we can get some sort of tenant in the space that meets the community's needs and desires.
Thank you. Nearby mixed-use developments rise to 8 or 9 stories, while this application is limited to 6 stories, despite additional zoning capacity. Has the applicant explored additional residential density? Would more units help subsidize the inclusion of more manufacturing space on the ground floor?
So originally, the applicant was ideally looking to do higher density. Specifically, if you look at the Rheingold rezoning across the street, it does go up to 8 or 9 stories. And ideally, I think financially, it was desirable to do a bigger development. However, after consulting with the city and reviewing some of the neighborhood plans, it was determined that at least in the mid-block portions away from Evergreen, R6A and a lower densities, shorter buildings was a little bit more appropriate. So that's why we propose it that way, and it's a shorter building. Similarly, when we were discussing including the residential units, one of the concerns that tends to happen, especially if you do a higher density and have a density change increase from what's existing, you have to worry about tenant displacement. So here, we're not doing such a big jump over what's existing on the neighboring sites that we don't have to worry about somebody demolishing those buildings, kicking out those tenants and relocating them. It'll preserve them, but it does have the option that if that for whatever reason they do get redeveloped, it's not a huge increase, and whatever increase there is going to be affected by that MIH, which will require the affordable housing.
So thank you. The applicant has stated that they hope this project demonstrates the potential of the MX district and do not want the surrounding area to become entirely residential. If an industrial tenant is secured, what measures would be taken to ensure compatibility between residents and industrial businesses?
So there's a few things to say about that. So, I mean, obviously the applicant is committed and is looking to have some sort of manufacturing use and certainly commercial use. But I think what's important, and I think is important to point out, that with the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity, the same text amendment that amended the introduction for the M12A district, the city also adopted new rules for streetscape regulations. And with that, there's actually requirements that developments of this size and larger particularly are limited to how much residential space they can have on their street frontage. So zoning by itself will require at least some of this to be non-residential, certainly not a dwelling unit, and limits the ancillary uses, the lobby spaces and whatnot on the ground floor. So there are protections in place as far as maintaining some sort of commercial industrial use on site, which is good. And then as far as the interactions with the remainder of the block and how the uses work with the residential, the MX district itself is specifically designed for this issue. Manufacturing districts by themselves generally don't allow residential. Residential generally don't allow any sort of light manufacturing. The MX district, the special district, is where the two merge, and it removes some of the higher offensive uses from the manufacturing while allowing the residential, but also puts in specific requirements when it comes to air or noise issues. So the tenants are protected, and it allows also for the commercial or industrial uses to be sited on site. But also going forward, and one of the reasons that we're going for this rezoning is, honestly, we believe that this rezoning could apply anywhere on this block frontage, but we want to be the foothold that if there is any changes, it's going to be similar. So any future applications for the area would have to be rationally related to ours, and these same things would be applied to any rezoning going forward. The idea being that if there were to rezoning, say, the sites further south, but they too would be subject to the same MIH, same mixed use requirements for ground floor commercial uses, and we'd have those the same regulations in place to preserve that there would be not just 100% residential, that there would be some sort of ground floor activated commercial space.
Thank you. And has the applicant considered curb management strategies, including loading zones or car share, to balance residential parking demand with the needs of industrial businesses along Melrose, given the narrow street condition?
So I'm going to see if I can find a slide. Here we go. There are currently already some loading zones in place. And just given with the high demand for parking, particularly for the residences, unfortunately, there's problems with those not being complied with as is. But to point out what I think was mentioned at the beginning, Melrose is a very narrow street. It's only 50 feet wide. Under zoning, anything below 75 feet is considered narrow. And when we're talking measurements, we're talking property line to property line, building wall to building wall, basically. That's including the sidewalks and whatnot. And even when we're talking narrow streets like this, usually we're talking 60 feet as being a narrow, is usually the standard for a narrow street. We're 10 feet under that. And what was shown in the photos previously, Melrose in particular even if we do have loading and have the truck have access to the direct access to the front, because it's a one-way street with parking on both sides, it's very difficult to get tractor trailers down the one-way street with parking on both sides, which is why we're looking for some sort of light manufacturing use that if they do need deliveries, it's not going to be a huge tractor trailer. It's going to be some sort of small truck, van, whatever it may be, because we may want to include the loading zone to allow for the loading and unloading in front of the building, but to make it down Melrose Street on that one-way street, it's very difficult. By comparison, the applicant actually moved their warehousing to the corner of Jefferson and Stanwix, where you can see Jefferson also is similarly very narrow, but parking is only allowed on one side. So getting trucks in and out of that side is much different situation.
All right, wonderful. Do you have any additional questions? Okay. Thank you. The panel is now excused.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the public?
There will be only questions from the panel at this time.
Perfect.
So the panel is excused. If we receive any questions from the public that we want to reach out to the applicant team, we will do that prior to issuing our recommendation.
Beautiful. And we look forward to it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. We will now call for testimony on this application from members of the public in attendance and online tonight. Please note that all comments are limited to 2 minutes.
So we'll begin with in-person testimony. Seeing that there are no one signed up, is there anyone in the audience that would like to testify? Seeing no one, we'll move on to WebEx. Those who wish to comment via WebEx, please use the raise hand function on WebEx now and keep their hands raised until you have delivered testimony, and we will call on you.
Okay. So we have no one who has, oh, there's one person. Okay.
Marissa, oh, you got it?
Marissa, you should now be on the stage and able to provide your comments.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Hello, Marissa.
Hello. Are we still talking about the former project, or are we on the Fort Hamilton Muse yet?
We are not on the Fort Hamilton Muse project yet,
So
Marissa. That'll be
sorry.
the next project. That's okay.
I'll go back to mute. Thank you.
Thank you, Marissa. We'll call on you after the next presentation. At this time, we have no one who is signed up or intended to provide comments on the first item. And hearing no additional comments, this item is now closed. Please call the second item.
Calendar item number 2, Fort Hamilton Muse rezoning. A zoning map amendment from R6B to /C23 and R5B to R7X/C24, and a zoning text amendment pursuant to Appendix F to map MIH to facilitate a new 11-story, 292 dwelling unit mixed-use development, including approximately 13,000 square feet for commercial and community facility uses, is being sought by 9305 Fifth Avenue LLC in Bay Ridge, Community District 10, Brooklyn. Please state your name and present this application.
Good evening. My name is Paul Prue, and I am here on behalf of BWH Development to present this project. Thank you very much for taking the time to meet with us. This is a project at the intersection of 94th and 5th Avenue in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. You've just recited the changes that we're pursuing. This would be for R7X/C24 with a MIH map amendment. And it would facilitate our 11-story building with 292 units, 88 of which would be income restricted, and approximately 75 cellar level parking spaces. Here you see it on the map. It's currently an R6B zoning district. on an existing C23 commercial overlay that stretches along Fifth Avenue from south of our site to several blocks north. This is an area of the borough that is considered by the plan for the borough as a local center. You see the triangular shape at the bottom of the map there. That's essentially the bottom of our site there. And it stretches up to 86th Street. This is the commercial district of Bay Ridge. And it's an area that, according to the borough plan, has prime commercial high rent and low vacancy, as well as low rent and low vacancy. But it's a stable commercial district. There are several vacant lots nearby. But the commercial strip just north of us is a vibrant neighborhood retail strip, as well as to the south of us. Immediately across Fifth Avenue is a large C8 district where there are mainly automobile uses. This is essentially where you go to buy a car in South Brooklyn. There's also some drive-through, a car wash, and those kind of uses. This site is well positioned to knit together those retail, existing retail strips to the north and south, and to make a continued retail corridor stretching from 96 all the way up to 86th. And to patch a bit of a hole, kitty corner from us to the southwest is Fort Hamilton Triangle, from which the project gets its name. The large angular distance going across 94th, the park, and then 4th Avenue creates an open area where additional density is appropriate. Here you see the existing Staples at the site. Staples is nearing the end of their lease and expects to vacate the premise in the next year or two, and we will then replace it with the proposed building. The site is 50 parking spaces on surface for half the site, and then a single-story big box retailer. You see it looking south to the bridge. Here's the southerly retail strip of neighborhood shops that our project would provide additional customers for and extend the commercial vitality to the north. To walk you around the outer edge of the site, beginning on 94th at the back of the site, you see the entrance to the below grade parking with a curb cut and a loading dock. The residential entrance would be at the corner of 94th and 5th, and then again in the center at 5th. And there would be a large commercial space and a large community facility space that would occupy the ground floor at the corner and a double height partial cellar on the northern edge of the site. So to hit a couple of the project highlights, this is a 233,000 square foot building with 30,000 square feet of commercial space, 20,000 square feet of community facility space. It would offer 75 attended parking spaces below grade, which we think is a good number to provide for these uses. It's located directly across from the 5th Avenue 95th Street subway station, though, so there's a great diversity of transportation options for both the residents and the people that will be visiting the site, as well as the B63, B8, and select bus service very close by. It should be noted that between 55 and 60% of residents in this neighborhood use mass transit. So again, the 75 spaces that are proposed are, we think, the minimum for an area where 40% of people are actually driving. So I think we're trying to thread a bit of a needle here. Some people think that's too much and some people think it's too little, but we think it's just right. So here's the site in elevation. You see in the center, that's where the residential entrance is with a glass stretch that bisects it into two different portions. The community facility space would be below the red brick area and would provide a lot of natural light through those windows into the lower levels of the building. And then the ground floor retail space would extend to the south and wrap around the corner of 94th. Here you see in the context of the neighborhood, it is one of the taller buildings around, but it's not the tallest. I mean, there's other things nearby that, as you can see here, this would set a new context for this block, though. The C8 district, though, is likely to follow suit within the near term on account of its sort of softness for development, and also the fact that Bay Ridge is one of the lower 12 community districts that are subject to the new charter amendment provisions that will allow rezonings to occur on an expedited basis. Here you see our site, again, directly across from the large C8 district that bridges the avenues and extends north. You may recall 9201 Fifth Avenue, which was before you in the last couple of months. That's the large brick building just above us that was recently rezoned to R8. And you get a sense here of the space on the corner that opens up as you go to the southwest. So in sum, this is new housing units in a neighborhood that really needs it. It would include 88 mandatory inclusionary housing units. Those are at 80% AMI. It would include a retail activation, vibrant, pedestrian-friendly ground floor, and the additional density to support those businesses in an area where retail is in high demand already. And we're looking at a community facility space for education, health, or nonprofit use, and some public realm improvements, including street trees, and really just knitting together the disparate retail strips, connecting these portions of the neighborhood where automobile uses had previously separated them, and ample enclosed parking below grade, so they're not in the line of sight. And there you have it. That's the proposed building.
Thank you for your presentation. Can you speak to and respond to any comments or concerns or conditions raised during community board review?
Yeah, I think one of the themes is that this area has not been invested in by either the private sector or the public sector. So there was a bit of negative reaction on account of the fact that this is one of the larger buildings that have been proposed in the neighborhood in recent years. But the public sector has not invested in this neighborhood either, and there are real issues with flooding. This is likely a combined sewer overflow kind of thing. As you heard in the prior presentation, our building would make some improvements to conditions related to flooding on account of the fact that sustainability laws now require us to, retain water in our building during storm events and to, do green roofs and those kind of things. So, we're hoping that this is a great improvement, but I think that people are very dissatisfied with the existing conditions in the neighborhood related to flooding and also traffic. As I'm sure you know, for marathons and other events, the Verrazano Bridge gets closed down, which causes horrible traffic jams in the neighborhood. And, I don't know if there's really a lot of good solutions for that, but I think the community sentiment is that they'd rather fewer new people move to the neighborhood than more. So those are some of the concerns. We came away with a recommendation for R6A from CP10 in the context of some community planning. The City Council and Land Use Division there, I believe, are planning to do some planning in that C8 district that I mentioned and expect to make some changes or propose some changes that would facilitate development there. So we're glad to see that. We're obviously a year or two ahead of that. And, we'll be hopefully starting construction and creating a new context for their planning work at this corner.
Given the existing lease of the Staples that you mentioned in the presentation of being 1 to 2 years left on their lease, sort of what concerns, if any, around the timing of sort of a delayed review of this would that have on the construction of your building?
Sorry, the timing of the lease?
Yes.
Well,
And
I mean, quite frankly, we're in a great position on account of the fact that we have a tenant that will continue paying rent until this process is complete, and then our Department of Buildings plans are approved. And it should work in such a way that we'll be able to give notice to finalize the lease term and then start construction the next day in a perfect world. But the reality is it might be a little bit delayed. I think that's what we're really aiming for, though, and the cards are lined up appropriately to make that play.
that's very helpful. I'm going to move to sort of public realm improvements. Are there any public realm improvements being proposed, like streetscape, pedestrian, tree planting, or other public space improvements that are associated with the project?
Yeah, well, so obviously the street trees that are required by law will be installed along Fifth Avenue and 94th Street in front of our building. And that will do wonders to greenify the area. As you go north of our site and look at satellite pictures, Bay Ridge is a beautiful tree-lined neighborhood just about everywhere you go. North of about 90th. But south of 90th, it seems to have been, most of the street trees have been sort of stripped for whatever reason, history. So that'll be, I think, a great improvement to this corner. And then we've also been in touch with the Department of Parks and Recreation about their Adopt a Park program. So the Fort Hamilton Park could really use a refresh. There's the paint on the flagpole is a bit rusty. The gates and fence around the park could use a paint job. There's some street trees missing from existing pits. And there's an old tree that could probably use some pruning. So they have essentially a $25,000 program that allows you to sponsor a park for a year. And so we're in talks on a scope of work with them to execute on that and expect to do so in conjunction with construction here.
And has the development team considered R6A in response to the community board's request? If so, are there sort of generalized or specific concerns around what that might do to the development proposal in terms of number of units or design or impacts?
Yeah, well, so R6A is essentially 4 FAR. And we're proposing 6, right? So it would knock a third of our units out completely and take the 90 units of affordable housing down to about 60. So, I mean, that's what we're talking about. And, so that's obviously not the greatest result. But for the project itself, we're currently at a 2 FAR with no affordable housing requirement and could do a really nice 6-story condominium building as of right. So, the idea is here to do an MIH district here that would require any development that occurred here to have 30% affordable housing. And when you look at the difference between that 2.0 and 4.0, you're adding essentially 1.2 of affordable housing if you take 30% times 4, right? So, that's a lot for a building that size to cross-subsidize those units internally, and to still do the kind of retail uses that we want to do to enliven and activate the corner, and to do the below grade, infrastructure that needs to support these uses. So in short, the R6A won't work for us, and we will pursue whatever options are available to get more than that. There may be something in between R6A and R7X, but the community board's proposal is not it.
Yeah, and some of the community board discussion, there was some discussion of the building's articulation as it approaches the back of the neighborhood. Are there additional strategies? I know the zoning doesn't require it, but in adding additional articulation of the facade or the massing of the building, I think a lot of the discussion that we heard when we reviewed the community board was around just sort of the street wall in particular, being quite a new form for people that they're not quite used to. And so that introduction is, if you have any thoughts on that, that would be great.
Yeah, it was really hard to pin down exactly what that concern was. The building at 9201 is roughly the same size as what we proposed, but, you know, it was made of limestone. So, you know, maybe you change the materiality a little bit.
Mm.
You know, I think there is a legitimate concern with the fact that this is a 300-foot long lot, you know, and so you need some articulation to really break it up a little bit and, you know, get away from like a Soviet block thing. But we think we've done that with, you know, 3 different materials that are separated by a glass column and, you know, a glass penthouse. Now, in response to early comments from the council member and other community members who we met with before ULURP started, we knocked the building down from the 14 stories you see in this elevation, which we think really does have a little bit better, lighter, you know, articulated form. And when you knock it down like this, in the words of one of our critics, it starts to look like a refrigerator turned over on its side. Now, we think we can make some improvements to this with just a little nip and tuck here and there, and obviously that will happen, you know, in the context of preparing plans for the Department of Buildings. But we thought that this was we thought that this was a good way to lead. It's just that the reaction to the 14-story height was such that we kind of pushed it down and we pushed it back. This is a 132-foot deep site. So there's quite a bit of room in the back that we were able to maintain our floor area with, right? We just kind of took the top off and replaced it on these 3 piers in the back, which unfortunately I don't have a perspective on. But, you know, the 132-foot depth allows us to have a nice sort of stepped down approach to the lower 6-story buildings behind our lot. And we think that, you know, that works. But I think maybe, you know, even if we stick with 11 stories, maybe going back to this sort of shape with a slightly larger penthouse, you know, would allow us to, you know, kind of create a form that, you know, is a little bit more welcoming.
Yeah, there is an interesting trade-off, I think, for folks when they're at the street level, in terms of the perception of the height of a building, and sometimes not always getting the view down the avenue. It can be hard to perceive, particularly when there's street trees, other elements, and sort of an active and lively street frontage. So I think we'll encourage the applicant to continue to look at additional form articulation and modulation that might be able to respond to the myriad of challenges that I think folks have spoken to. And in some cases that might be additional height and moving the floor area around. And in other cases that might be exploring other zoning options in the palette. And so I think, but this is very helpful to see that articulation at the 14-story level and sort of what it does to the massing of the building. It can be quite counterintuitive to some community groups that a sort of taller, thinner building can be less bulky. And so we often hear about height in this chamber, but oftentimes people are really responding to the mass of the building or the bulk of the building. And so that was very helpful to put that into the record to sort of think about the relationship of those. So thank you for doing that work.
Yep, we've been thinking very hard about that question and would like to come up with something that, you know, satisfies a few more of our critics. Not all of them.
One more question. You mentioned that Parks has the sponsor park program for $25,000 a year. How many years would the applicant be interested in taking part in that?
Well, I think the 1-year commitment is on the table, and if you know, we are able to reach a density that makes sense, perhaps there could be more. I think that right now it needs a 1-year commitment. But, you know, once you start pulling a string, sometimes it takes you different places. And then we certainly are going to be here for a long time and are making a big investment in this corner in the universe, you know, so we're glad to, you know, be a good citizen and do whatever it takes.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. This panel is now excused. If we have any additional questions, we will reach out to the applicant team following the hearing as well. And so with that, we will now call for testimony on this application from members of the public who are in attendance and online this evening. Please note that all comments are limited to 2 minutes unless given additional time by the chair.
We'll begin with in-person testimony, followed by participants on WebEx. Is there anyone in person that would like to testify? Seeing no one, we'll move on to WebEx. So for WebEx participants, if you would like to speak, please use the raise hand function and keep your hand raised until after you've given testimony. And we will begin with Mary Whalen.
And Mary, you'll be followed by Dustin. Mary, are you there? All right, Mary, we're going to come back to you and see if you would like to provide after that. We're going to go ahead and call Dustin up to the stage to provide testimony.
Hi.
Hi, Dustin. If you could just introduce yourself and then the floor is yours for comment.
Dustin, we can't hear you.
How about now?
Perfect.
Okay, great. Sorry. Hi, I'm Dustin. I live on 86th Street near 5th Ave in Bay Ridge. I support the rezoning. This neighborhood is a great place to live, and I believe more people should be able to live here. We all know there's a housing shortage. This neighborhood has not done its part, and this is an empty parking lot right next to a subway station, so it seems like a no-brainer to me. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Dustin. Dustin, you will be followed by Marissa, and then after Marissa, we will try to hear from Mary Whalen again.
Hello?
Marissa, we can hear you. If you could just
Hi.
introduce yourself and provide comments, we'll let you know when you are running low on time. But since we have a few number of folks signed up tonight, I'm going to allow you to speak for a little bit longer.
Oh,
just
you
because I
can,
know.
if you could
Okay.
skip me then, and I'll go last because I really struggled to sort of put this together to say something.
Okay, we will.
Want to repeat myself. Repeat them.
Okay, we can do that, Marissa. We'll go ahead and go back to Mary. Mary, if you would like to speak, please unmute yourself. I'll give you a couple of moments.
Am I,
Oh.
you hear me?
We can hear you
yay.
now, Mary.
Great. Thank you so much. So my concern is the fact that I know this is a fast track project. And because of that, there's been no environmental nor transportation studies. So my concern is with transportation. As was said, it's 1 block from the 95th Street train station, which is the R station. We have 1 track that goes into Bay Ridge, 1 track that goes out. My concern is, first, as they're building, how will this affect the train station and the stability of the train station, as well as once this is built? Now, what was said was that they will have 75 parking spots for building people. And he did say that roughly 60% of the people in Bay Ridge do use public transportation, which is true. And I was always one of those. That does not mean that the people that are taking public transportation don't have cars. Anybody that lives in the area knows that there is almost no parking, no street parking, because once you hit roughly around 94th Street going down to 101st Street, that is almost all apartment buildings on both sides of 4th Avenue, which makes this extremely congested. So while you may provide 75 spots, we have almost 200 spots where there will be no parking for these people. I think they're being a little disingenuous when they've said in other meetings, you know, how wonderful, you know, their project is going to be for Bay Ridge. They also talk about the park. Now, anybody who knows the park over there, we're talking a triangle, which is very, very small, that they're putting $25,000 into for 1 year. And that was when it was first said to us. That was supposed to make us feel so good because they were going to put trees in and paint a little bit. That is not helping, except it's just cosmetic. You know, does it look pretty? Yes, it does look pretty. We're talking, if you look at transportation, you're going to see roughly, I'm going to say about 300 additional people getting on the R train or any of those buses that come by. And I don't know that that area actually, I would get on at 86th Street, which is one stop away, where you could always get a spot. A seat. Now you're going to have to wonder whether or not you can even stand on the train as we go into Manhattan. So I think that's one of my biggest concerns in all this. And while he says that there's been no investment, public or private, and people think that Bay Ridge is not doing its part, if you took a look at Bay Ridge and you saw what the makeup of Bay Ridge is, a high number of 1 and 2 family homes. We do have a lot of rentals in apartment buildings, but we also have a lot of co-ops in apartment buildings. So there is, while it may look like we're not doing our part for the rest of the city, there is very little open space in Bay Ridge. Now, I'm not crazy about Staples leaving. I happen to like Staples, but I don't know that I want 11 stories, almost 300 more apartments going up that doesn't fit into the Bay Ridge area at all. And that's one of my big concerns. And the fact that if the developer thinks that changing the kind of stone on the front of the building is going to make us happy, I think I think he's very he's not up to date on what's going on. I have a great concern that and I don't have problems with having more affordable housing. I think that's a wonderful idea. I was one of the people that was for the 6 stories. Yes, I know that would mean fewer affordable housing, but actually not significantly less affordable housing. His concern, it seemed at the time, is that the building would probably be condos. And I'm not against capitalism. I get everybody's here to make money. I don't have a problem with that. But I don't think we're one of these poor neighborhoods that is desperate to get in all these, you know, a lot of extra housing, when I think we provide a lot of housing as it is. When you look at the majority of 1 and 2,
Mary, I'm going to just giving you a warning that you have one additional minute left.
Oh, okay, thanks. If you look at our 1 and 2 family homes here in Bay Ridge, they are selling for $1+ million. 1 bedroom condos, or co-ops rather, are going for $450. 2 bedrooms are going up for $700,000 to $800,000. So we're not a poor neighborhood, and we're very happy to have, you know, have additional neighbors come in. But I don't think it's fair to just dump all these extra people without having a place for them to be able to live their lives the way they might want to. a discussion went up about where are all these kids going to go to school. And it was said that they were sure the DOE would figure this out after the building is built. That is too late. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mary. And for those of who are watching online or may watch the recording of this, just as a point of information, all of the project's application materials and background analysis that are part of this green fast track application are available on the city's website at ZAP, which is the zoning application portal. And so if you just go to zap.planning.nyc.gov and search for Fort Hamilton Muse, you can find that information, including previous presentations to the City Planning Commission, as well as the recommendations from the Community Board, Borough President, et cetera, just so you can see what additional information might be available. With that, I believe Marissa is our next person. And Marissa, you will have up to 6 minutes to speak.
Oh, wonderful. Disingenuous, I'm so glad she said it, is not even close to what this presentation was. In fact, I would go so far as to say it kind of misrepresents my understandings of what I saw in the community board meeting. But, you know, nobody said they wanted fewer people to come to the neighborhood. Nobody's anti the affordable housing. What I understand is that I guess I'm the only one who is in the same lot, who shares the same block as this applicant. So I feel like I'm the only one that can speak to you about the realities of this neighborhood. He's on lot number 1. I am one of the lots facing 92nd Street. There's about 7 or 8 houses about exactly the same size as mine, similarly situated, going down the row. We are a diverse group of families, hardworking people, Filipino, Bangladeshi, Chinese, Guyanese, Hispanic, being me. I think there may be another Hispanic family. The surrounding street, Gelston, also very diverse, Polish, Middle Eastern. All of us are here because it was an affordable and nice place to live. What we didn't know was that R5B would come along with a commercial overlay and subject us to all of this construction and constant land use notices that make living here quite a bit difficult because we don't get enough notice to have our voices heard. I've spoken to 2 of my neighbors. One has authorized me to say that, you know, he's on board with my concerns and agrees with my concerns about this project. As I understand it, I have reviewed all of the ZAP materials in great detail, looked at all of the images, and I believe there are some things that are not entirely accurate about the submission that I would like to point out. There is a reason nobody lives on Fifth Avenue where the Staples is. Okay, it's not really livable. I live in a hot zone of construction, and the big building, the 9201 4th Avenue that he mentioned, is now being converted to residential, but it was an office space because it wasn't necessarily a suitable area for residences. There is so much noise and construction that happens here. And, you know, there was this bar there. It drove out all of the residents on, in several buildings that are adjacent right behind the lot number 1 on Fifth Avenue. So, noise is, and construction is particularly an issue there. But there's also, as he mentioned, the car wash. It has 2 curb cuts, so you go through from 4th Avenue and you end up on 5th. Dunkin' Donuts, 2 curb cuts. You go through on 4th Avenue, end up on 5th. the EV charging station, which was KFC, 2 curb cuts. You can cut through on 4th Avenue and end up on 92nd, which people did crazily when those curb cuts were open, because 92nd Street is so congested. 4th Avenue is so congested. The congestion is insane. There is double parking on 4th Avenue from the intersection of 92nd Street all the way back to the Dunkin' Donuts routinely. And then there is congestion on 5th Avenue from double parking from 92nd Street to about the Dunkin' Donuts area, where there is double parking for loading and unloading, which now is probably going to be exponentially increased by the EV charging stations, because my research showed there's it's one of maybe 5 in South Brooklyn, and all others are outside 5-mile radiuses. So we're looking at a real problem there. Not to mention, if you're unaware of it, but PS 104 turns 92nd Street into a parking lot from about 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. when they pick up children. And it's not just 92nd Street, it's 5th Avenue, and it's Gelston Avenue, Gelston from 90th to 90th.
Marissa, sorry to interrupt you. I'm just letting you know that you have 1 additional minute left.
Oh goodness, I can't really do it. There's something wrong with these plans. 94th Street cannot house commercial loading and a parking garage entrance. It just can't happen. You're going to steal at least 5 of our parking spaces. We've already lost 5 recently, and nothing will be able to get past you. All of the residents use 94th Street to exit from Fort Hamilton to Gelston. Hundreds of people live in apartment buildings on Gelston and in Fort Hamilton Parkway. And if we can't get to 4th Avenue already, I've given you my map. I'm willing to give you my testimony as well. But there's one other thing I wanted to say. Duncan seems to have been a paid sponsor of this proposal, because he didn't really have anything to say. Mary, while she had something very good to contribute, she also doesn't share my proximity to the situation.
Marissa, I'm going to ask that you keep your comments to the proposal and not to your neighbors.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
So, I just think it's important to hear my position, because I actually live there. The proposed drawing says 94th Street is 60 feet wide. It identifies it as narrow. That supports my position of what I'm saying to you, which is that it's too narrow to have the parking garage entrance and loading on that area. The minute you have one commercial truck unloading there, you're going to back it up and no one will be able to get out. EMS won't be able to get in for people who are in distress, and it's going to be a serious problem. The modular scaling.
I'm going to ask if you can please wrap up, Marissa.
Sure. The modular scaling does not seem to be to scale. To build 2 level underground garages for 75 cars is going to require 20 feet of excavation that is going to shake the entire neighborhood for probably months. And I don't know how that's feasible with the fact is that the R6A proposes 75 affordable housing units, if that's your focus. His proposal for the zoning change only gets you 13 more, which shows that he wants twice the number of floors so he can collect rent, not provide more affordable housing. And that, to me, the fact that he's built this thing all the way out to the lot line for rents, not a single outdoor space for enjoyment of anybody, it shows that this person's goal is to collect rents. This model is more suited to Ocean Parkway or Gravesend or Coney Island, where they are building monstrosities. But the special zoning district.
Thank you for your comments, Marissa. We will ask if you have additional comments to please submit them in writing. feel free to reach out to our office to provide additional concerns, context, content, and we will take it under advisement as we prepare to support the Borough President's recommendation on this item.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional folks in the room or hallway or online who would like to provide comments on this item? If so, online, please raise your hand.
Streeter Kelly.
Can you hear me?
We can. Please introduce yourself and then the floor is yours.
Hi, my name's Streeter Kelly. This borough and the rest of the city, it's facing a historic housing crisis that's displacing our friends, our family, and neighbors. This project is going to create 80 permanently affordable homes. It's like 1,600% more than the 5 produced from 2014 to 2025. These affordable options are sorely needed, particularly in an area where half the tenants are rent burdened and a quarter are severely rent burdened and spending more than half their income on housing. Inevitably, critics of this project are going to say, I support affordable housing, but followed by an explanation of why this project is wrong-headed for one reason or another, whether it's height or aesthetics or degree of affordability. Today, this land it's empty. It's a Staples and a parking lot that floods whenever the area, whenever it rains. It has 0 affordable homes. It's hard to think of anything less aesthetically pleasing than a parking lot. There's nothing historical or contextual. It's a parking lot and it floods. This area has everything families are looking for in a neighborhood: transit, right near the subway, great food, great schools, great park space, and more. All it needs is more housing, which is where you come in. We hear again and again that the community boards and the city council members that represent want more family size units. In this project, we have a golden opportunity to do just that. Every unit cut arbitrarily is a door cut, it's shut open. We got to open this up to families here. And I urge you to support this project at 9305 Fifth Avenue. Let's build more housing that we desperately need. Thank you.
Thank you, Streeter, for your comments. Are there any additional folks online who would like to provide comment at this time?
And if you have dialed in on a phone, you can press *3 to raise your hand.
At this time, we have no additional folks who are signed up either here on person or raising their hands or indicating that they would like to speak online. And with that, this item is now closed. With the end of this agenda item, this ULURP public hearing is now closed. The Borough President will review this application and submit his recommendation to the City Planning Commission, which will also hold its own hearing on these items at a later date. As a reminder, members of the public may submit comments to testimony@brooklynbp.nyc.gov for the Borough President's consideration until the end of day on Friday, June 12th, 2026. With that, this meeting is now adjourned.